There's a reason I call myself secluded nowadays. Because it seems like no matter how many times you try to be friendly to people, whether it's through a random viewer, a recommendation, or anything of the sort, they either like to use things against you, or they just outright ignore you despite the varying messages I try to send them. But it is not always their fault, and is in most cases usually mine as well. There's been some events that's been going on in the Discord, and I would like to formally apologize if I have caused any bullshit that has happened between now and October. I think it would just be for the best if I simply do things my way and not try to be open to people. Because letting things out in such a way, whether it's not morally correct, it's just going to cause a path of self-destruction, and I don't want to deal with it. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about some shit. I really like the original Turok on Nintendo 64. It is one of my favorite first-person shooters on the system, and next to GoldenEye, its gameplay and overall charm to the game has so much ooze that it's not even funny. A lot of people also really like Turok 2, its sequel, being the most innovative shooter of all time, but you tell me if this is playable in 2023. Yeah, this shit wasn't even playable in 1998. I really do not give a shit. Also, as far as the structure of the game of Turok 2 is concerned, is fucking awful. And the fact that Night Dive literally had to put a waypoint system just because of the actual bad level design Acclaim did back in the day doesn't exactly make things better. Then there's Turok Rage Wars, which is probably my favorite of the 4 games that came out for it, the Nintendo 64, since it essentially took the Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament style gameplay and turning it into a Turok-based game. And it's actually pretty good. The inflator is overpowered though, but it's still a good time if you're able to play with people. The Trials mode is fucking awful though, but it's still a decent arena shooter if you can get used to the fact that it never got ported outside of anything else. So, unless you're using a mouse and keyboard injector, which by the way is cheating, then you're not going to be able to enjoy what possibly the only correct shooter to actually have a morally correct loadout system. You could probably write off as Rage Wars just being a multiplayer-eccentric game, but given that it has bots and actually decent gunplay, for the most part. The AI wasn't exactly perfect, but remember, this was a Nintendo 64, so you weren't going to get exactly cutting-edge technology, but I'll digress. Then we get to Turok 3, which is just Turok 3. Honestly, I don't really remember people even saying this game was anywhere near as good as the sequel, or even the original game, or even Rage Wars. Turok 3 being remastered and actually being brought into all modern systems is honestly pretty great, because it gives people a chance to play a Nintendo 64 game that never really saw the light of day. It's kind of like what Doom 64 did, except it took until the release of one of the worst Doom games besides Doom 2016 to get out there. And before anyone asks, Doom 3 is still a good game. It's not like it tried to overwrite the originals in some capacity. I will agree that having it being called Doom 3 despite being a soft reboot, or whatever the hell it's trying to do, is pretty fucking dumb. Considering how Doom 2 ended, I don't really think it was wise to call essentially a retelling of the original Doom, Doom 3. At least it stands at its own though, but that's not the point of this rant, as much as I would like it to be. So for those who aren't in the know, Night Dive Studios has released a remaster of Turok 3, and I've just caught a glimpse of it on Steam as I was going on my ex-Twitter charades, even though I'm kind of considering not bother using the damn thing anymore, because, let's be honest, I'm basically shadow banned, and the only notifications I get are from literal sex bots and whatever bullshit notifications that I get that involve some really shitty scamming contest. I think that hacking situation that happened a while ago was a blessing. blessing for me to get off that shithole, but we'll see how long I can stare at the abyss until it stares back. This is probably the most disgusting remaster of a game that's not even that good. Like, I remember being pretty fucking pissed off at GoldenEye for being essentially a straight rip of the original Nintendo 64 classic, but at least it had local multiplayer. And even as shitty as the Switch version was, being restricted to the Nintendo Switch Online version, you still got the whole game. It's just on a really shitty platform, and even Xbox owners got fucked unless they bought Rare Replay digitally. But you still got the whole game. And as much as it sucks that GoldenEye, the remaster from the 360 days, didn't get used as the baseline version of the so-called remaster of GoldenEye and Xbox, you still got the original version with everything intact. Well, mostly everything intact. But this honestly takes the cake as far as disgusting remasters are concerned. Seriously. People say that modern gaming is dead. Well, I don't think this is doing any favors, okay? Let's look at the checklist, okay? It's $30 on everything. I assume it's on PlayStation 5 or 4, whatever, the Xbox Series X and Xbox One, lol, and of course Nintendo Switch. Now, even though I didn't really bother playing through Turok 2, mainly because I don't really like Turok 2, hot-ass take, but I really cannot stand that fucking game. And if I'm going to be playing that shit, I'm going to play the original PC port, since that shit literally has a quick save system, and even as archaic as the original Turok save system was, at least the saves are plentiful, and even without... Actually, no, I'm not going to be that dishonest, but the original Turok basically required a memory pack if you wanted to save your game, but Turok isn't necessarily as long as, say, Blaster Master. Even without that, you could still use the cheat codes, but I can understand somebody not being really happy about that. But then again, Turok 2 pretty much had the same thing, but Turok 1 isn't anywhere near as annoying as Turok 2, mainly in terms of level design and overall structure.
Hey guys, this is Escape Room Player from the future with very apparent audio mic quality difference, whatever the fuck. Apparently, of all the things that Night Dive Studios has done with this supposed remaster of Turok 3, they removed the ability for you to use cheats. You know, the thing that kind of made Turok a lot of fun, being able to use the Chronoceptor outside of the final boss, being able to use the nuke, even though that weapon is nowhere near as good considering you can't use it against bosses, but whatever. And even with Turok 3, with the various cheat codes that were in the game, even some of which are nowhere near coded, and the one that you get for actually beating the game on Oblivion difficulty about dying or some shit, letting you play as one of the Fire Seeds. So, I have no idea how this remaster works at this time. I'm going to assume there's also not going to be a chapter select, since this Turok is significantly shorter than the first two, and even though I really do not care at all about how Turok 2's structure was, at least it has a hub world, and Turok 3 definitely does not have a hub world, so how the fuck are Night Dive going to incorporate these very basic things in a actually overpriced remaster that actually cuts content? I'm gonna drive it home again for those who are gonna say, oh, you should play the game first before judging it. It is literally an old Nintendo 64 game that you can easily emulate long before Night Dive decided to remaster it. And if people are going to give a lot of modern-day AAA companies shit for releasing a game without the content that was included in the original, what makes you think that Night Dive is going to get any less slack for doing it? I swear, people are going to defend them just like how people are going to defend Aspyr for releasing an announcement for Tomb Raider, even though they were literally the same company that canceled the KOTOR 2 expansion DLC for the Switch. That shit's not coming out either, I can tell you. And if it actually does, then holy shit. But until I see actual evidence, kind of like of Akuma being in Tekken 8, I am not going to hold any promises that they're going to do that shit. Did I word that right? I don't fucking care. I just wanted to throw this in as an addendum to this rant, because I'm really annoyed that even indie studios do the same bullshit that the corporate AAA greedy piece of shit companies are doing with a lot of these so-called remasters. And they say that these games are going to be remade or remastered. What is Resident Evil 4, Alex?
But even with Turok 2 being the way that it was, that was remastered also by Night Dive, both Turok 1 and Turok 2 were reasonably priced. The original Turok didn't really have much going for as far as content is concerned. They only really maybe adjusted the first level because they felt that the original was too easy for whatever reason, and even threw in a nightmare difficulty, which essentially makes enemies on fucking steroids, and even Turok 2 added the pleasure of having split-screen multiplayer for the PC version, and even having online play for every version, except the Nintendo Switch version. Yeah, that's a load of shit. Night Dive essentially took out the multiplayer from Turok 2, retained it in its purest form on the PC version, restricted it to being those online-only games that too many games are being released nowadays, and completely axed the Switch version. As with Dusk on Switch, I refuse to buy that shit because they're essentially charging highway robbery for essentially getting less content out of a game that's already good. It happened with Doom 2016 on Switch, and it probably happened with a bunch of other games, but this is just unacceptable. Even for a game that's not even liked in the Turok series, okay? If this shit were to happen with Turok Evolution, then I think people would be pretty pissed. Which is actually kind of ironic, since Turok Evolution's PC port didn't even have multiplayer, so I guess some things never really change, now do they? I posted on X Twitter that people are already justifying the price, which is funny because people always pull this shit, and it really annoys me because this is just bad. Now, I'm not going to say that Night Dive is lazy or that they didn't do a good job on it, because I'm sure they did a good job in the ports. Their credibility for remastering older games and putting them on newer systems is certainly not to be tested, as they'll pretty much take any old game from long ago and basically refine it for a modern experience. But what the fuck happened with Turok 3? Okay, that game was already a fucking mess to begin with. Like, it didn't even get a PC port back in the day. At least Turok 2 got one. And even Rage Wars didn't get that, but I don't know if they're going to do Rage Wars. And honestly, after this, why should they? They'll probably just make Rage Wars single-player exclusive because, you know, fuck multiplayer, right, guys? But oh wait, Call of Duty's a thing. Yeah, have fun with your fucking Modern Warfare 3. Seriously, I can't believe they actually tried to put Doom skins in a Call of Duty game, and yet only the Call of Duty kids will know what the fuck that is. Disgusting. But when you charge $30 for a game that's not even good, and removing multiplayer from all versions because nobody likes it, is honestly retarded. And it sucks that people are going to justify this. And I don't know how liked Night Dive is as far as ass-kissing is concerned, but this is disgusting. Even AAA companies have done this shit with games like Uncharted, which was also done by Bluepoint, by the way. You've seen people that ruined the Demon's Souls remaster, or the Assassin's Creed trilogy by Tidysoft, or even other games that essentially removed content from the versions of the game. People got more pissy at the Metal Gear Solid HD collection not having the skateboarding demo, which was just a Konami skateboarding game that just so happened to feature Metal Gear characters as unlockables, or having the Ape Escape bonus missions because someone at Konami was a fan of it at the time or something. I'm not exactly sure. Or even the other unlockables that were only on the original PS2 version, while completely neglecting the fact that even a decade later, they still couldn't even bother putting in the boss rush mode from MGS3, despite it not having any ties to exclusivity nonsense. Shit is faking gay. But sure, let's justify a company who's supposed to be on the indie side, because fuck AAA games, right? Unless it's From Software, Capcom, Nintendo. Might be missing somebody. Not forget it. But when indie games start doing this shit, And even when Bluepoint of all people messes that up with the Uncharted collection, the original one, that is some fuckery. Somebody's gonna try to justify this, and I'll be willing to hear this. But not until I hear about Godskin Duo from Elden Ring is considered a great boss, when people will shit the fuck on Blade Bearer and Canonus, the big fat dude and the waifu chick from Code Vein. And no, Ornstein Smo is not a good fight. I fucking said it. Let me just stop before I derail this into a fucking Elden Ring rant. Elden Ring sucks.